Morning, Bruce. Good morning,
Good
everybody.
morning, Jeffrey. What's going on this first day of daylight savings?
I forgot about it till this morning, and I had a panic attack.
Ah.
I'm like, well, how does that going to affect anything? Because, you know, in the old days, which was not that long ago, we didn't have phones that automatically updated. You'd wake up, your computer was screwed up, your clocks were screwed up, and if you were panicking, you were really panicking.
That's right. Yeah. Well, there's still a few manual clocks around here in this room. Oh, I hear kids in the background.
Oh, your audience is there.
Cool. That's my son. He's yapping around. He needs his marbles. I lost my marbles already. I can't find them. They're gone.
You're in good company. Don't stress.
Yes.
So all's well. Other than that, we had some snow last night, but it's supposed to get to 50 today.
All right, that's good. Well, here we are, March 13th. We are heading into the spring zone, so there is hope on the forefront, right?
There is, and so I'm looking forward to this. We spoke recently, and just so you know, my version of my book, The Contemporary Percussionist, is supposed to arrive Wednesday. It was like a week delivery time, so that was kind of
there's been points where I've had some students who've ordered it outsourced to like Steve Weiss or whatever, and there's been back ordered. And honestly, I think some of that's due to my pushing the book and people ordering it through my talking about it or my direct students ordering.
Well, I mean, I'm one of them. So I'm excited to get it. This was like perfect timing. I'm excited to do it, start working on it as I push this year and get back to a little bit more of my drumming roots.
Here's a clean copy of it. Now I say clean because I have two copies, and how I describe the second copy of my book.
Mm-hmm.
If anybody's a fan and has watched The Wizard of Oz, as we all have in multiplicity.
Just be honest.
Book looks like the Scarecrow after he gets pummeled by those flying monkeys. It's just pieces, man. I mean, they have a very good binding on this, so the glue comes undone pretty quickly. However, one of my students who just got the book showed me his copy, and it looks like they have like a more old school stapled, which I still don't understand why people don't just use a spiral binder on any music book. I don't care if it's a drum book, a saxophone etude book.
It's so easy.
Or Easy Harmonica Etudes by Toots Tielemans. It's got to have a spiral binder so it sits on the music stand, and you don't have to fight with the pages and get them to sit back.
I suppose we could all get a hole punch like old school and do our own, but then you got to rip it out of the glue. I don't know.
So I did that with a couple of books, and it looked horrible. So I know that some of those copy kind of joints will do that for you. They'll take a book and they'll put a spiral binder.
The only thing I request, and they didn't have, I would love to have a digital version, because I do like my tablet doing the digital version, but not every book yet is there. But they
no. I'm sure though. If I go in and maybe talk to the guys at Pro and then talk to Rob Wallace and work something out. But there's also got to be like a protocol of like how in demand is the book. Yeah. I don't know, but I do know that people are interested in it. I find it to be a very engaging book. I will give props out to George Edwards, who brought the book to my attention more than 20 years ago. George is a guy who studied with me. I met him through Freddie Gruber, but George had studied with me, and I helped him to relocate. In essence, there was a guy who was looking for a replacement teacher in Japan, and George was really at this stage where I think it was good for him, and he made the trek over there, I think in 2003, and he's been there ever since. He's going on 20 years, man.
Wow. Well, I'm excited for it, and then we'll get into this. I just Tony dropped in here. Let's just show Tony's up here. Welcome everybody.
Tony, how are you? Yep, I saw Tony had made a comment. He has his copy of the book. He made a comment on one of the posts that I put up, so that's great.
That's fantastic. Yeah. So if I'm here for you guys. I'll be in the chat room with anybody that's here, and you're lurking. That's great. But if you want to drop a comment as we go, I will push it along at some point. So with that, I suppose we'll let you kind of do your thing.
Yeah, don't hesitate to jump in.
Sure.
Our groove. So I will say another thing that once I got this book 20 something years ago, I also kind of lost touch with it. I remember looking at it and going, "Wow, that's kind of cool," and I didn't catch the engagement with it like I did a few years ago. And the reboot, why a few years ago, was I have a student. Well, now I haven't seen him in a little while, but the guy studied with me for about 4 years or so. And he's one of the early, or is the early drummer to Earth, Wind, and Fire. That's Ralph Johnson. And Ralph loves to read and has all sorts of books. And at one point in his lesson, he said, "Do you have the Contemporary Percussionist?" And then I gave him the old joke, know it, I wrote it. No, I took that book off the shelf, and there's duets in there. So we started to do some duets. And then I was fishing around and go, oh, hey, look, these first etudes, they're pretty interesting. And they're an odd time. And, you know, I was okay, pretty good in reading, but man, I was getting my butt kicked. So then it really kind of built the incentive for me to go in and look through things. And I started to develop some conceptual things that I thought was helpful to my students. Moreover, though, I use this book in a little bit of a different fashion. I'm not really vested into the tempo settings that are there. I'm looking at the spacing values, some of the movements, and instilling some of the sticking concepts that I use. So let me kind of start with a little bit of some of the sticking concepts, and I'll go into an etude. I know not everybody has the book, but maybe I could just at least point out the notation so everybody can look at it. But let me start with something. So a couple of things that are big policies for me in a couple of these etudes, and I'll jump around to a few, but I'll start with the etude in 4/4 on page 19. So, and I'll give you a quick shot here. There it is. Let me raise my music stand. So, you know, there's some dotted 16th, 32nd note, 16th triplet figures, and there's a bunch of cool different roll effects. And the rolls, the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to, as I say, tripletify my rolls. I'm going to make them all triplet based. So anything that falls on an and or is a half of a quarter note, so an eighth note value of roll, would be a 7-stroke roll. And there's a few challenging ones. When you go into longer rolls, they can be a little challenging. And there's a couple of rolls. Well, not on this one. There's one that starts on the E to and I'll do a little breakdown of that momentarily. But let me go into some sticking ideas. And these are things that I've been talking about for a number of years. There's the value of the up and down stroke. And there's a paradiddle sequence that I do. I've modified it more recently. And there are some wonderful little vignettes at the end of the Buddy Rich book that I've readapted. I put different stickings to them because I found that the stickings that were there were not as helpful and user-friendly. I thought that some of the more paradiddle-esque stickings that I use, or paradiddles or double paradiddles, all those kind of stickings that offer a very clear down and upstroke value, were much more valuable, and they add more of the tap dance nature to those kind of phrasings. So that being said, without getting too long-winded, here's a little sequence that I do, and then I'll give you why I do this and how that affects what we're doing in this book. So for example, a single paradiddle. Now we know, or maybe we don't, I do, because I've been doing it for years. I have a specific motion choreography to that. And of course, it can be augmented depending upon the circumstances. Everything is negotiable. But the basic premise of a paradiddle sticking would have a down, up, double, down, up, double. And if I'm just playing this in a neutral way, you know, I'm getting a soft down. I'm not accenting that. I'm just going to come down and be mindful that I come down with the stick and support it on the down, but don't overplay it. Don't let gravity sucker punch you into an accent. And we have a down. We have an upstroke. Up, 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 up. And if you want to really build some good fluidity, and we use a reference that probably nobody knows, but I'm going to hearken my inner Nijinsky. If you knew who Nijinsky was in history, he was a great ballet dancer and have said to be able to float in air. And I became aware of that from Gruber. I also thought about all the great tap dancers and how the up and down stroke is very similar to dancing. And that's dramatically demonstrated by Steve Gadd when he does the constant release approach on the bass drum pedal, which again, thematically is the same idea. So that being said, let me play this little sequence and then I'll maybe narrate a couple things. But I'm going to play 4 bars of a single paradiddle in eighth notes, and I'm going to play 8 bars, but I'm going to loop it. So there's going to be a little changeover. I'm going to do 4 bars of a right-hand lead, or starting on a right-hand lead double paradiddle in eighth notes. And I will reboot and go to the left-hand lead. And then when I hit my third one, that'll be a triple paradiddle. And there's a few little movements that I want to be mindful of. So here's the single paradiddle, 1 and 2 and 3, up, 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 and 1, 2, and 1, and 2, and 3 to B, and 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and 3, and 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, and bounce and close, and 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, and bounce, close, up. So now I'm playing a triple paradiddle. 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, 2, 3, back to the A. Okay, so there's a few variables in there to get comfortable with and get some control. And again, you can play, a nice snappy upstroke. And of course, not let that get stuck in the mud and disrupt the upstroke value or the extended lift on that. So in other words, if I'm playing that neutral single paradiddle with no accents, look at my motion. And I'm going to add the upstroke accent. So there's a draw in the back of the hand. You got to get familiar with how that works. But there's a draw and a little snap, and there's some efficiency factors that make that super easy and not disrupt the upstroke, whereby when you pull the accent, you come flying off the pad, or you pull the accent and you get stuck in the mud. You want to really be able to fulfill the same range of movement that you have when you're not playing an accent. And so in the double paradiddle, if you were paying attention, I played both accents, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. You could go, but in that setting, I just want to play both. So I'm still accenting an upstroke, but I'm also giving consideration to the downstroke. And for the triple paradiddle, I'm just playing that 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and again, putting some of the downstroke accents in there with a consideration of an upstroke accent on the paradiddle part of the triple paradiddle. So why am I bringing that up? Well, just point this out again. I know that this might look like fly shit, but there's a lot of notes in there. But there are some paradiddles hidden into these 16th notes where we can go, oh, hey, man, there's a triple paradiddle. So, for example, on this line 3, the first bar, that first 2 beats of 1 E and 2 E and well, there's my triple paradiddle, 1 E and 2 E and Now, I know you could stick it other ways, but there is a consideration to make of fluidity of your execution of things and also broadening your range of what you can do with your stickings. And they don't have to be done that way. I want to bring forward in my students, as well as my own development, a little bit of range and motion so that, if I feel like not doing that, I can hit in and do, for example, just hand-to-hand alternating strokes. Or, for example, on a double paradiddle, so there are cycles of 3, I could just play it like 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4, and just play right, left, left, right, left, left. Still considering, though, a down, up, down, up, down. That's another thing to kind of get involved in, just so that you understand how that works. And again, the big thing for me is like, if you can make good music on a practice pad and move it around, this becomes a little more tenable. It's like, hey, we could do that, get that around and take the idea of these movements and revoice them and reshift the note value so that you have some interesting intervals that you're working with your drum set. So, all right. So that's one of the big considerations, getting those double paradiddles and triple paradiddles and single paradiddles. And there is one point on 1/16th note where, and actually 2 in this one, where there's an opportunity to go 1 E and 2, and again, add the upstroke as the potential for the accent. Does it have to be? Again, I'm going to say no, but it swings. And then there's a whole dance that you're trying to access with all those stickings. So now let me go into a little bit of the idea of the rolls. So again, I know that nobody has the book, and I wish I could have maybe put up a PDF, but I don't want to also, violate this guy's copyright laws. By the way, the author of this is Charles Memphis. I don't know what happened to him. I did have a live stream that I did, I think it was in maybe 2020. And a couple guys on Facebook had stepped forward. One guy said, I studied with Charles Memphis. And the other guy said, I worked out of that book with my teacher when I was a kid. nice to hear, but I would have been very interested in hearing about the studies with Charles Memphis just to understand what his conceptual approach was. There's a lot of identity of Wilcoxon things in here. So, and that's some of the formulative sticking ideas that I would put in there, that those, if you've done Wilcoxon enough, you'll see the repetitive nature. And those should sit well vested in your muscle memory and use those. Because this has no sticking. So you're trying to develop some formulative use of those things that allow this notation to flow easily. And again, I'm not worried about speed. It's really about drawing into a flow, a lift, a breath, and feeling the space of everything. And the way I do the rolls, they're very dense, so you can't do them real fast. So that being said, with this roll right here, this, whoops, I'm putting that out of camera view. Sorry, I got to come back in here. There we go. I'm backwards. This roll starts on the E of the 16th note, beat 3. So I have a dumbed down version of doing it. I'll play it first. I'll play I'll play line 2. I know, again, you may not have line 2, but here it goes. So those rolls would be 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and 1. So I'm putting the roll as a 7-stroke roll from E to Suffice it to say, you can dumb that math down. Treasure your ear, right? In other words, bring your ear into a place where you can dissect the mathematics. You think an E to that might be blinding. You may not really be able to process that super clear. So let's take for a moment a figure where we just play 1 E and dumb that down for a moment and take every 16th note value and just make it a quarter note. So it'll be 1, 2, 3, 4. Whoops, 1, 2, 3, 4. So knowing that 1 is 1, 2 is E, and 3 is and 4 is the roll being a 7-stroke roll starting on beat 2, again, E, going through beat 3, and those would be 8th note triplet, 8th note triplet. So if I just did it slow, just to hear how the math works, it would be 1, 2, and 3, and 4, 1, 2, and 3, and 4, 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and So anyway, that's how I arrive at that. And it's challenging. Some people take a moment to process. It's not easy. If I was doing just a quarter note roll, my roll would be built around 16th triplets. So there is a quarter note roll that occurs in this. It's on beat 4, and it would just be, the outline would be 4 E and E 1 with a roll 4 E and E 1. And that would be a 13-stroke roll. And again, there's this very specific choreography that I would build into that. A lot of this guy's rolls have accents on the downstroke. So you do want to come in to the roll with a little bit of a, little pop on that. Not every roll. And in general, my building of rolls would always produce some kind of a punctuation mark at the end of the roll that would either be, as I say, a period, so not accented, or an exclamation point, accented. And it's just, again, really good stuff. So let me play it down, and you'll just sort of get a sense just from the ear processing. And of course, this live stream will be up. So if you go out and get the book, you can look at page 19 and you can get corroborative evidence of what's going on. So here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, and All right. So again, there's a lot of stuff to unpack in there. Very cool stuff. Really like the arrangement of the triplets that come in. And for me, again, mathematics would dictate that I need to process them in a way that I can count things and, again, feed the ear nicely. If I'm playing those triplets that come down on the 11th line, I'm not going to be able to count a triplet that will really suffice with the 16th notes built in there. So each triplet grouping now becomes a little 3/8 bar for me. So if I was playing that half note roll into that, it's 1, 2, 1, 2, and 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, and 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, and E, 2, and E, 3, E, a 1, E, and a 2, and E, and 4. A lot of counting, but it's good to process that. You know, the old say what you play and play what you say theory is one of the more dynamic things that I really push in my teaching. And it's not only the say what you play in terms of the actual notation count, but absolutely the movement, the choreography. If you're not lifting on where the upstroke really should sit, it's going to be delayed or early. It's going to screw up the flow that you can get into. Everything is a dance. And so that's page 19. That's one of the etudes that I use. Very fantastic one. I really like those. Let me jump around and I'll just go into an earlier section of the book. Oh, there's Larry. Hi, Larry. That point about learning to play a given passage, exploring a variety of different stickings is extremely useful when orchestrating said passage on drum set. Great reminder. Thank you, Larry. Larry is one of my former students, studied with me for, I don't know, more than 2 years. And yeah, digging into these things is very valuable. One thing I will say that does spark a little bit of an idea here. The idea of establishing different values for rolls, super valuable. You know, when you're getting stuck somewhere and you're limited as to how you perceive a roll. Like, for example, many people see a roll as an eighth note as a 5-stroke roll, 1 and 2 and 3. I could assign any value to that. I could make it the 7, 1 and 2 and 3. I could make it a 9, 1 and 2 and 3. I don't know if I can go beyond that because that's getting dense. And I'd have to think about it for just a moment. But yes, there are different values of rolls that you can definitely instill. Excuse me. And that is also very valuable when you do buzz rolls. I'm not buzzing anything here. I don't want to buzz anything. I want to work on a really clear inside the hand delivery so that all my doubles are nice and round and bubbly and doubly. So let me go, though, to like the thing that blew my mind when I first saw it. And I'll give you a little conceptual thoughts to how I learned to count this. Again, mathematics. The first, I think it's the first 11 etudes. They're all mixed meter. And I remember when I went through this with Ralph, I was like, oh, shit, 7, 8, 5, 8, 2, 4, 3, 4, you know, and I was like trying to hang on for dear life. And I remember working on a Podemsky book, a passage many years ago. I could pull it off the shelf, but it was 1 and 12, 8. And when I was a kid, I was thinking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And that's too many numbers. It never dawned on me to take each subgrouping and just say 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. It's far easier. It doesn't break your teeth and your brain. So for these odd time etudes, what I was doing was, okay, and he's got it craftily done. There's a dotted quarter. I mean, again, here's the notation. You won't see very much, but there's dotted quarter and quarter note grouping. So they're in basic groups of 2s and 3s. And for me, because I can count pretty effectively, you know, I can do in 6/8 because I did a whole bunch of Wilcoxon studies and I can think and count in 6, but it's easier to break a 6/8 thing up and just break it into two groups of 3 as well. But for the 7/8 bar, here's the 7/8 bar. I'll just put this up here and let's take a quick look at it. That's over here. Whoops, I got to come back here. I'm so backwards, man, with that. So you've got 1 and 2 and 3 4, 5, and 6, and 7. Okay, that's going to break my brain, man. I can't think like that. So I'm just going to take the group of 3 and just go 1 and 2 and 3, 1 and a 2 E and a 1, 2, 3, 1 and 1, 2, 3, 1 and 1 and a 2 and a 1, 2 and 3, 1, 2, 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 3 E and a 1, 2 and 3, 1 E, a 2 E and 1, 2, 1, 2 and 3. And I'm just going to take the groups of 3s, count them in 3. Anything that's quarter note based, which would be 2s, I'm just going to default to how I see it. So when I see that second half of that first bar, to me, it's 1 and a 2 EN. Once my brain processed that from that standpoint, I could see the mathematics so much clearer, and it was not a daunting affair. And, I went back and looked at other odd time materials that I would have gone through earlier, and things seem to have elevated. So what I did with this just for fun, just as a concept, and I'm not going to, because I got to get my mic set up. I've got an appointment with Jim Toscano to kind of work my system through so that I don't have to mess around and pod down and all that stuff, and have a little switch where I could just play. But with the feet, well, just as a standard protocol for the feet, when I'm in 3, I'm just going to go boom, chick, 1, 2, 1, 2. When I go to those quarter note subdivisions, I'm just going to go 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and. So in other words, if I played the first bar, let me just loop it. It would be 1 and 2 and 3, 1 and a 2 E and a 1 and 2 and 3, 1 and a 2 E and a 1 and 2 and 3, 1. And so boom, chick, boom, chick, boom, chick, boom, chick, do chat, ding, chat. And so that's hard to absorb at first too. Because first you're looking at the math and you're trying to get that all accomplished, and then you got to add the feet. I found the feet actually very comforting. And actually, if anybody has seen the Al Di Meola interview that just came out with Rick Beato a week and a half or 2 weeks ago, I think it was, he says one particular statement that I think drummers can really learn from. It's actually for everybody. But he said, guitar players all sit up here. And he goes, they're not connected to the bottom. The bottom of the time, how you add a support system to what's going on here is ultimately the most important value. If this is disconnected from this, or these are disconnected from the feet, it's chaos. And so, in my building block process of generating an essence of dance with the feet, those things are big considerations in how I build things. And I can tell you just recently with one of my newer students, who had an epiphany. All of a sudden he said, man, my band even hears the difference of how my bass drum sounds, and I feel more solid with my time. So if you're kind of floating on the ball of your foot and you're not getting to the bottom of the time, that can be something that is maybe getting in your way for time feel or for just good inner confidence of where your time sits. So anyway, these were a blast to do that with the feet. And then the second way was, Tony, I'm reading from page 1, study 1. That was the first odd time one. I just opened that one up because, again, my tattered and torn book, when I look back here, page 1 was waiting for me. So, and again, there are those sticking issues that you can utilize. There's a 16th note figure that would be 1 and 2 and 3 and. And I would just default to going 1 and 2 and 3 and as a double paradiddle. There's a 6/8 passage with all 16th notes, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and the accents are 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and 1. Play it as a paradiddle. It's groups of 4. And that's definitely nabbed from Wilcoxon because he does those kinds of things in the book when they're in 6/8. More towards the bottom of the passage here, study number 1 on page 1, is the opportunity again to play paradiddle, double paradiddle. Actually, that would be a triple paradiddle. Paradiddle, triple paradiddle, 1 and 3 and 1 2 button, etc. I'm defaulting because I'm trying to maintain too much count. So those little details of stickings are things that I would say try to invest your time in investigating. For my students, it's sort of a nice segue, because there's things that I go, hey, we already know this. Let's look at this passage like this and add that sticking value. I don't throw it at first because I want everybody to get familiar with the material. In other words, let your eyes absorb what you're seeing. And then as you go through it and you start to get familiar with the little bumps and the left turns and the speed bump over here, then you're a little bit more inside what's going on. And then we can, start to investigate the navigating stickings for a better fluid presentation of it. Anyway, so, that's another thing that I would use. Let me go back to another section that I really did. And I call this the Ted Reed Syncopation on steroids. They're all syncopated figures, eighth notey, right? So here we go. This one's called A la Breve. It's on, page 49. And it's like all Ted Reed syncopation. Here, I'll kind of play it with, see if I can kind of hang here and look forward. A 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, and 4. A 1, 2, 3, 4. Etc. I gotta get my eyes on the paper. So in this setting, because it's all swinging, I'm going to just make a rule that we imply all the rolls as a triplet-based roll. So what does that mean? Well, first roll we come into on this, and again, I'll turn it around, it's a dotted quarter roll, right? Right on the and of 3. Now, if we're thinking these are swung eighth notes, that dotted quarter would fall on the of 3, because we are swinging the eighth notes. It just basically gives us now that we're playing the first and third partial of triplets. So if that was on the and of 3, it now becomes the of 3. So if you were playing that passage and the first note is tied from the previous bar, so it'll be 1, 2, and 3, and 1. And that dotted quarter would have that length, of course. That's another whole discussion. But in this setting, we're going to play that as a 9-stroke roll. How would that work? Well, here's the outline of the roll of the dotted quarter. So I'll just play that portion of it. It will be 1, 2, 3, A4 and Lee 1, A4 and Lee 1, A4 and Lee 1, 3, A4 and Lee 1. So as I'm playing that passage, there's, again, like a little understanding of the note value, but also the choreography, which would be down, tap, up, tap, down. And on that roll, there's an accent to start the roll. So we do want to go A4 and Lee 1. You go down to the end of that line, and you got a half note roll that starts on beat 2 and ends on 4. So I'm just going to play that bar. And the roll outline for that would be 1, 2, and Lee 3, and Lee 4. Whoops. A 1, 2, and Lee 3, and Lee 4, ending on B4. So 1, 2, and Lee 3, and Lee 4. A 1, 2, and Lee 3, and Lee 4. And on and on and on. There's a really cool roll section on line 7. They are half note triplets. So 1 and Lee 2, and Lee 3, and Lee 4, and Lee 1. And you are outlining the half note triplet rhythmic phrase because that's how it's written. It's not accented, but you still want to give a little shade and color to the outline of those rhythms. So let me play this one down, and then, I'll maybe hopefully get a couple of questions in here, and we can kind of segue. And I got a couple other things I could bring up as well. So 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, and 1. Okay, and the last bar is a fermata, so you call a hold. I just usually take those for the purposes of the clarity of the inside of the hand roll, and I would say just play that through beat 1 of a bar that doesn't exist after that. So again, I know this is kind of out of context. You have to have the music to sit there, and I could count it out and sit, and I would do that as I'm breaking it down. I'll play a little run through again and maybe do, I don't know, the first half of the page or so. And I'd go 1, 2, and 3, and 4, 1, 2, and 4, 1, 2, 3, and 4, 3, and 4, 2, 1, 2, and 3, 4, 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 4, 1, 2, and 3, and 4, 4, and 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 4, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, and 3, 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and 2, and 3, 4. I'll stop there. As I'm going through this, and there's those sections of 16th notes, those are all straight, of course, and then the inside 8th notes I would straighten out as well. So that one figure is 1 and a 2 and 3 and then a roll 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Now I have a little setup behind that for me that works really well with the sticking. First and foremost, the bar that precedes those 16th notes would be 1, 2, and Lee, 3, 4, and Lee. So I'm playing a paradiddle from the of 1, the of 3. That's the same figure. So it's left, right, left, right, right, left, right, left, right, right, left. And why am I hitting that on the downbeat for line 5 of this page 49 a la breve in The Contemporary Percussionist by Charles Memphis? Because I can better get those 16th notes with a right, left, right, those 3-stroke roughs. I'm just going to loop this one phrase. 1 and a 2 and 3 and 1 and a 2 and 3 and 1 and a 2 and 3 and. And if I go, well, to get that 3-stroke rough is right, left, right, much more efficient and effective with my right hand lead than my left hand. And yes, we do want to work the left hand lead, but when you're in the middle of reading, you're not thinking about, oh, I have to give equal time to my left hand. You're going through and trying to bring the best phrasing and consideration to everything that you're doing. So you don't want to get hung up on that. However, you do want to have off ramps and the ability to, get in there. And if you didn't hit your right hand at the right time, you go with your left hand. It does not disrupt the fluidity and the execution of the game. So that, that's a great one. There's a few on page 51. There's another, I don't know why he did, like everything is the same name. There's 3 a la breves. There's a bunch of study ones and etudes in 2/4 and stuff like that. But this a la breve, which is the third of the 3 on page 51, is beautiful because there's no rolls. There's a whole opportunity to set up like 6-stroke rolls inside these triplets. Like he has this figure. Let's see. Oh, sorry. So 1 and Lee 2 and Lee 3 and Lee 4 and Lee 1 and Lee 2 and Lee 3 and Lee 4 and Lee 1. Those are really common things. You would see those with Philly Joe Jones. There's some setups where he's got some 16th notes where he does. So it's 1 and 2 and a 3 and a 4 and 1 and a 2 and a 3 and 4 and a 1 and a 2 and 3 and 4. Well, that's that phrase. I just did a video. I posted it on I think Instagram. It should go up on my YouTube channel. It's taking a building block that I call the paradiddle did. It's missing the second double of the paradiddle diddle, and it walks nicely into the bluzda. So it's take the bluzda. Now my right hand is going to be played as a grace note in front of my left hand. So I'm just smashing the 2 hands together to make a flam. So it starts out as 1 and a 2 and a 3 and 4 and a 1 and a 2 and 3 and a 4. So if I play the back to back, I'll play. And there you have the bluzda. And those are in there, and there's some great paradiddle diddles, so you can play, So in that phrase of 1 E and 2 and a 3 and 4 E, well, if I was playing that faster and hitting the accent with the right hand, that would be what we call the Herta. So there's these little gems in there to kind of find and bring out. Just one, comment from my vantage point of sitting and going through this. Not everything works like really well phrase to phrase. Sometimes he does, I don't know, something like, it's like a 39 bar affair. Why 39? Why not just do, like 40 bars or 32 bars? But he's got some odd time phrasings in there, or odd bar phrasings in there. But that's okay. That's all good. You want to really get that together. Bruce, I noticed when you play the eighth notes in a swing feel, do you think the author wanted them to play straight? Oh, Tony, that's again a consideration, just grabbing in from Syncopation and swinging them. He may wanted them to be straight, but everything's got, if you're doing that, you're going 1 and 2 and 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2. It's just, you could do that. I have no problem with that, actually. But there's other literature I would use that would mix that kind of stuff, and some of those etudes. The etudes, for example, that I did on page 19. While they have an implied swing feel with the 16th note triplets, all my 16th notes are straight. I'm not going to swing anything. Sometimes my students, when they enter into that, they'll default and start to swing the 16th notes, and they go, no, play those straight. That one, play those straight. So it's always contingent upon the what we're looking at and the interpretation. Again, there's many interpretations. And at the end of the day, if you were working with a bunch of people on this and there was something that was, you were thinking of it one way or another, hey, if the composer or the band leader or the producer says play it this way, you jump to the left. You don't go, no, I'm going to play it this way, because you got to be able to adhere and accommodate. So here's another etude, though. I'll throw one more in that I found to be very cool. This is an etude. You'll find this on page 16. Again, it's in 2/4. And there are 3 rolls that are a challenge that I, again, interpret as 11-stroke rolls. And they've fallen on the E of the 16th notes, extending to the downbeat of the next bar. In one case, it's a 1 bar, so it goes, 1 E and 2 E with the roll. So it would sound like this: 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and 1 E and 2 E and. So that's 11-stroke roll. I'm going 1 E and 2. So in order for me, and this is how I came upon it, that to get that to feel the 11-stroke roll clearly inside the hand, you could allow yourself to push the start of that roll back to the second partial of 16th triplets. Second partial of 16th triplets, 1 E and E, right? So 1 E and E is not too much of a difference from 1 E and pretty darn close. It's like a sliver. So in order to, again, bring an interpretive quality for starters, I still want to have that roll come down on the E. And it's, when I'm going through it, you may not hear it. I hear it on the inside. But you could play it as 1 E and E, 2 E and E, 3 E and E, 4 E and E, 1 E and E, 2 E and E, 1 E and E, 2. So all my downbeats, the first part of the roll is a single stroke, and then the 5 partials of 16th note triplets are doubles. So 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and 1. Again, that's a sliver away, but when I'm giving the structured count of 1 E and you hear my rolls coming right down on E of 16ths. 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4. Whoops, I blew that left double there. So that's a challenge. And there's one that goes so again, I got to think about that to articulate that. So there's 2 16th notes with a group of 32nd notes. That would be 1 E and What would I do? I'd bring it up so I could count it, and I would bring that 16th note, 32nd note for that one group and play 1 and 2 E in it. And then I would default back and hear my roll in beat 2. Again, that's a lot of jumping around, but I want to hear the math and I want to be super accurate with all the counting. So, as I say, the math, the way it sounds, is the way it's supposed to sound. Your head and how you process that is what you want to work with and help to shape an inner understanding of the mathematics behind the notation. Let me play this one. Let's see if I don't fumble this one. I think I got this one. Let's see. 1, 2, 1 and 2. Whoops. That's a tough one. So I'm just looking for really good, dense, clean rolls. Again, applying specific rhythmic factors to them. You can do it a whole bunch of different ways. My setup, again, includes some sticking values that would be, you know, things that I work on in a regular basis or on a regular basis with my students. There's great drags in there. You know, when you're getting a drag, you want to get a really clean squeeze. You can always dirty it up, and I don't know how, if you're hearing the difference, but that's more of a buzz instead of. For me, it's a double. It's 2 strokes when you play a drag. It could be a 3-stroke rough too. Those don't really come as forward in the positioning of the 2 grace notes for me. I will use them occasionally, but they do come into play in other factors. There's an etude in 6/8 that there would be, and I would dance with a right, left, right on those 32nd notes. Those aren't grace notes, but that essentially could be considered a 3-stroke rough. There's great, again, like these 6-stroke rolls. Fantastic. Flam paradiddles, you know, throwing in double paradiddles, rhythmic cues, it's got everything. But again, when you formulate a different factor of rolls, and what I found is that the triplet-based roll really adds a nice value to these. So again, like here's a little bit of this one in Etude in 6/8. This is page 18. So that would be 1, only 2, only 3, only 1. Because again, the roll factor, remember when you're counting in 6/8, the 8th note gets a count. The 16th notes count like an. 32nd notes would be counted like 16th notes. And so when you're doing triplets over that, 16th triplets over the 6/8, it would be, you know, groups of 9, 1, only 2, only 3, only. So 9 16th triplets. All good to know. Math, you know, you got to work it out. It makes it clearer here. So by no stretch of by the imagination was I thinking like that when I was younger. I had good math skills. I had good reading skills. When it came to drum set, I was never thinking rudiments. I still don't think rudiments. But by going through this, this has like recalibrated the inside of my hand for double strokes. It's been a great golden find. And it's good to have good reading material just to stimulate the eyes, the math, the sound of things. So you really get a perspective. You still have to do mathematical approaches when you're thinking about getting around your set for articulation. You know, there's a consideration. You could fly by the seat of your pants, or you can know what you're doing. I err on the side of kind of knowing what I'm doing, so things are mapped out and at least able to be processed. And then at some point, it collects right here. So it is a feel. It's a confidence of your sentence structure. So, Jeffrey, I'll draw you back in here for a minute. Are there any questions, or do you have any questions or comments that you want to add?
Well, I'm anxious to get the book now. So I was bummed that my book was not going to be here before. Thank you, Tony. I appreciate that and the great questions.
Yeah.
I was hoping my book would be here, but you know what? That's okay. You know, we got time. And this is really good insight leading me on into this. I don't know where, by the way, on that note, I got mine off of Amazon, but I know that there's a couple other places that you might be able to refer people to, because it's really,
it's a Pro Drum Shop publication.
It is.
So
okay.
they published the book. In fact, like I said, I think they made a new version of it because the paper on the old one is great. Of course, the font or whoever hand wrote these is just beautiful. You know, it's not all perfect and pretty because it looks like it was handwritten, but fantastic. And Pro Drum Shop is one absolute spot you're going to be able to get it. And then I've seen it on the Steve Weiss website. I think one of my students ordered it from Lone Star Percussion.
Okay.
And, you know, you just got to look at those. I think those are the more usual suspects. I'm not quite sure because I don't, you know, if I do get a book, it's generally I'm going to Pro Drum Shop. In the old days, I've got a pretty good collection of books up there and a few on this other side. And not like some of my students. I got two guys like Ralph Johnson. I think he has every book ever published. I mean, he's certainly a consumer of books, as well as my student, Steve Hatfield, who is the adjunct professor at Wichita State University for the Jazz Studies program. And he has a whole bunch of books, and he'll bring up books. And every now and again, someone will bring up a book that I haven't heard of. And, you know, and if it's interesting, I'll check it out. Most of my, you know, collection is things that I use regularly, like the Chafee stuff and Buddy Rich and Colin Bailey and Ted Reed and Stick Control and what else? Ralph Humphrey, Even in the Odds, is a great book. My book, Puzzles, Rhymes, and Riddles. I always forget to include me. I'm not the best promotion-minded guy, but you know, there's other things that I put up there. Like I've got the De La Cluse book, I've got the Cerrone book, and Podemsky, and this book by Emil Scholl that I worked on when I was a kid, which is a really good book too, because it gets progressively more difficult. And that has all the stickings written in. As I say, like, here's my joke with the Wilcoxon book. Now, this is applicable. I'll always say with the Wilcoxon book, the greatest thing about the Wilcoxon book is every sticking is written in there. So you really get a chance to navigate through and formulate some flow with that. And the worst thing about that Wilcoxon book is every sticking is written in there.
Right. You get fixed. Yeah. You forget rigid, and it's like, that's how it is in the book. Oh, God.
You want to be able to draw back and kind of use other things too. Now, I like the Wilcoxon book because it is absolutely.
Yep.
Tony got his from Pro Drum Shop in California. Yeah, Hollywood, California, Pro Drum Shop. They've been there since 1959. I haven't been in there in a while because of COVID, and that's kind of, you know, kept me held in a hole. But I used to go in there, and I'd go into their back. They got a little back library stock room with books, and I just go, and it's amazing how many books. And I just go through there and go, hey, wow, there's like several shelves filled with that because it's all alphabetized for the drum set stuff.
I always love doing that. I mean, I don't know what people here generally use. I mean, I always want to have the hardcover book. I think there's something cool about that. But for whatever reason, I've gotten into that mode where I also seem to buy if they have the digital version, I just go ahead and buy that too, to have you spend more, but I like to have the convenience. But there's something about having the book that feels, I don't know.
It's the changing world. I'm a hard copy guy, so I like to have the book in front of me. I do have a few things on the digital stream, but I'm less inclined to go to those, you know. And in fact, who was I working with? One of my students, and he had one of these exercises, and he's looking at it on his phone. I went, man, at least print it out or get it on a tablet. How can you see it on a phone?
Yeah.
Phone is like looking at ants. Right?
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. You got to have for me, I only use it if I have a monitor down here or I have a big enough tablet. It's not really worth it. It's not like reading a novel on a small phone even. Okay, you can get away with that, but it's not great for, you need a decent sized tablet, at least a 10-inch tablet to make that kind of work.
Right.
But I like to have the books, you know, things. For me, I'm always trying to improve on my paradiddles, my double paradiddles and all that. But I mean, just looking at how you're getting inside these roles with that book, I would assume that you're just going to wake up and it's going to really help propel your.
Well, yeah, you know, I'm not the only one who's speaking about the value of that. My several students, and one in particular that I just my student Donnie, he's been with me for a number of years, and we were going through this, and I just said, "Man, how are your doubles feeling?" He said they feel amazing. You know, there's other ways to do it. I have my little calisthenic routines. So there's my tap strokes to doubles exercises that I have, which one would be more of a 16th note base. And I do it from 8th notes to 16th so that when you get to the doubles, that you can count out every 16th note. When you apply a double stroke roll over the 30-second notes, the more normal way of us doing that, and you're counting 1 E and a. Well, that's nice, but that doesn't account for every stroke because you're saying 1, and that's for 2 strokes. So if you just dumb it down to 16th notes and go 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a, 4 E and a, 1 E and a, 2, you can really track better. So, for example, I'll see if I can speak this out without kicking my teeth out of my mouth. But 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 and a, 4 E and a, 1 E and a, 2 and a, 3 and a, 4 E and a, 1. Okay, that's at the verge of where I'm just going to start to get unglued.
Yeah, the wheels are going to come off.
Right, but you want to hear the math again. You want to know it's and in the triplet version, what I always struggled with for myself, and then I realized, here's a better way of doing it, was trying to play 8th note triplets to 16th triplets, which again would be the same ratio or relationship. Going 1 and lead 2 and lead 3 and lead 4 and lead 1 E and E 2 E and E. It just always feels like, what would happen there? So, again, for the ear, 1 2 3 1 2 3 or 1 2 3 4 5 6 1 2 3 4 5 6 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and 1. Okay, again, that's on the verge where 1 and 2 and 3 I can't just get it out. But if you slow it down, 1 2 3 4 5 6 1 2 3 4 5 6 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and 1. Okay, that's got none of the choreography. That's all wrist driven. There's other elements that I would add, down in upstroke values, so that you get the essence of that. And where they need to be applied is a case-by-case scenario, because I might play a 9-stroke roll like that one I did with the dotted quarter, where it was up 4 and lead 1 with a down tap, up tap, down. I might play a 9-stroke roll with a tap, tap, up, tap, down, and start. So the only downstroke was the downstroke of my paradiddle. Everything else, well, that's not true. There was an upstroke that, again, punctuates the downstroke of my paradiddle. So it would be tap, 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 up, tap, down, tap, 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 up, tap, down, tap, tap, tap. And that upstroke still exists. It's in a smaller range of motion now. I can bring a little bit more to it, but you can't get too high when you play slower because it'll compromise where you are on the stick tip. Time and space and motion and placement is crucial. And so to make that case easy, that's what I do every day of the week with everybody, is just to really draw into where the releases are and how you can utilize that motion to perpetuate a easy flow with moving that stick.
One of the exercises you did that I remember getting from you that I thought was, it seems so easy on the surface, but you're going from a kind of a straight sticking almost to a roll to a triplet feel roll, and it seems like it'd be so easy. Remember the New Orleans riff that you had?
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? Where you're coming from the 5-stroke, and then you're going to kind of an E and L1
right.
feel, and it seems so easy on paper, but then you get so frustrated I did trying to clean that up. I don't know. It just seemed like you come from one, it seemed like a little more straight, kind of opened up roll. Then you have to jam
what was
that.
That was like,
yeah. Right.
Yeah, that was kind of using the flam taps.
We did the 5-stroke, then you'd switch it up. And I thought that was I mean, that's the kind of stuff that seems so easy. I think that this book would be very interesting, or kind of similar to that idea where you're.
Well, it does actually kind of address those specific things. And again, stick control is a great resource for little loops, because you have at the end of the book where he's doing all the roll values. Let me just pull that off the floor real quick here. Where do I have that? That's one that's always within reach because I use it.
Your assistant was slow. Yeah.
Yeah. So you have 9-stroke rolls to quintuplets, and you got sextuplets to a 9-stroke roll, and all those little values that you want to kind of loop. There's one particular loop that I use a lot to just a smaller range of roll. And I did a YouTube video on this, and it's just a 7-stroke roll. And if you go to page 30 in stick control and look at number 11, it's 1 and 2 and 3, 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 1. And so my motion would be down, tap, 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 up, tap, down, tap, 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 up, tap, down. You can step back and bring it to number 1 because it's the outline of it without the roll. 1 and 2 and 3 and leave 1 and 2 and 3 and leave 1 and 2 and 3 and leave 1. Now, again, you know how I dumbed that roll down early on where I went 1, 2, 3, 4, doing that 7-stroke. Sorry, that sucked. 1, 2, 3, 4. There we go.
There you go.
I would dumb it down too. So how do you dumb down something in 3/8 that you can hear? So I would say if I went 1, 2, 3, 4, and then put my triplets in a 2/4 bar, because that's what they're going to be for the 7-stroke roll. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, only 2, only 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, only 2, only 1. Again, I know you're not going to be able to maybe speak out the 1, only 2, only so quickly, but you can hear it better. And again, once you hear it and you're going, oh, it's. So now the math is aligned. You got the hearing. You supported it with some intellectual approach of counting, however you want to do it. And then you can start to burn on and go. And again, just calibrating the inside of those doubles so they're not, and I'm fighting with those. You want to bring about a nice, easy open to close on the inside of the hand. How the stick sits in the hand and the efficiency of how that works, is going to be determined on what you're doing mechanically. That's where, you can get really nuanced on the inside of the hand. And again, that's something that I do on a daily basis and have been for 100 years. That's all we have to work with, the duple and the triplet feel, stickings and double. That's true, Well, you can have triple strokes too. I don't know how often we go. But you can have that in there. You could do some triples. But yes, in the single and the double thing, if you're thinking of counting, yes, that's it. The game is 2s and 3s. Not 1s and 0s.
Right. It's math.
That's the electronic realm.
So
so those are some things that I do topically and to gain little perspectives and little loops to maintain the fluidity of the execution process. And then it's always a great game to go and look at like a piece of music, like those little etudes or studies in the contemporary percussionist to, 1, bring your eyes into the picture. Bring some of your interpretive stickings into the picture, because there's no serious direction there of unless you're working with me and then I'm giving you direction, but you have a zillion ways you could kind of muster up some execution factors sticking wise. But my conclusions are led by things that I've done. Like I said, Wilcoxon. Those are formulative little building blocks that became in the back pocket. So there was a period of time where I went through the Nard book a lot. And in a lot of those Nard studies, there's no directives. There's occasionally you'll see 5-stroke roll or paradiddle or this. But in a lot of them, not.
Is the I'm trying to remember. Is the Buddy Rich book like that too?
Buddy doesn't have a lot of no. There's no stickings in the roll factors. And what I used to do with Buddy's book for the short range rolls and long range rolls, I would do the same thing. I would just reinterpret them to different values.
Okay.
It's good because when you get down to press roll world, you want to be able to go. If somebody said in an orchestra, here's your tempo 1, 2, 3, 4, and you're going 1, 2, 3, 4 because you've been led to look at drum literature and see that a double stroke roll is 30-second notes, and the conductor is going to look at you and go like, "What is that? I want to roll, not 30-second notes." So then you have to go 1, 2, don't bump 1, and you have to add a different value. So I would take different values of like 7s and 5s depending upon the tempo, and I'd work them out a little bit so that I could feel that when I was in the throes of it, I didn't have to think so much. I mean, I knew where the quarter note was, but my hands would be responsive. So like sometimes when I'm playing, I can't tell you, that was a 7 at the very end. I mean, if I go back and evaluate after the fact, I go, I did a 7 because I needed to get out, from quarter note to quarter note.
Yep.
So anyway, those are, getting a little more finely tuned for that activity of rhythmic values of 5s and 7s. They're still good to know. But on the bigger front of things, your triplet based rolls or your 16th note based rolls, hey man, that's the game. You got to get those together.
And I mean, just one of the things I always struggled with, of course, like a lot of people, is going snare to tom. So I mean, I would assume we clean these things up more. We clean them up at the top end with if you're on a tap pad, when we go on a snare.
Oh yeah, man.
It's really going to make a difference when we go into these tom efforts if we have to do some rolls.
Well, there's things that I do. Right, there's things that I do. Like I've got a bunch of different systems of moving and really focusing in on the value of a roll on the tom surfaces, because the floor tom surface versus the small tom surface. Right. Those are two different planets.
They are. It is definitely Venus and Jupiter. I mean, it's
exactly. Yeah, floor tom's all gassy and floaty and and you got to get in there and really articulate.
No gravity whatsoever. It's just
So, there's a system of things. I do a few different things to address those values, and the one is I won't speak too much, but I have a book that will be coming out. I don't know how soon, but we're just about finished with the book. I think I've got 98.7% done. I just looked at one of the, let's say one of the final copies. And there are those kinds of things that I address in that book regarding that. They are systems that I've used for years. And, the hardest part of a book like that is to give you the perfect setup for it, because it's in a book, but I will give videos that will accompany the book so that there will be better direction for that.
Now you've always said, I'm not really a traditional guy. I can teach it. Did you go through this book at all? You going traditional? Do you ever try to play around with it much?
No, because I do play traditional grip from the standpoint of like, it works, but no, that's something, that's one of those things that I should probably do just to even get a better, fixation on that.
And I'm going the other direction. That was the whole deal with you and I was going from traditional, moving over to match, and I cannot believe how weird of a world that was for me. It's getting there, but wow.
Well, I abandoned the traditional grip like somewhere in my first 6 or so months with Freddie. There was so many moves and so much stuff going on.
Did he languish that? Was he like, no, you shouldn't do that? Or did he have opinions?
Here's how I remember the conversation. I said, and I don't really want to do this traditional grip stuff because I'm a match grip guy. And I think this, just like a little too much. And he looked at me and went, okay. Kind of like,
you're such a disappointment, Bruce.
Yeah. Kind of like disappointed.
You're not.
And later on though, I have a great retention for memory, and I always compartmentalize all the exercises. So like everything we had done was like resting on a library shelf in my head. When I went to, and I did play a little once in a while traditional grip. I had a picture of me on the first record that my brother and I did, and I'm playing, I think, one of those tunes in traditional grip. So, so I did do it. I just did it not very often. So, but when I went to, I was living in Belgium, and I went down to teach at this school in Austria for about a year. I ran the drum department. And so I knew, as I was called to audition, so to speak. I went down for a week, and they wanted to see how I interacted with students and my concept and all that kind of stuff. So I was like, all right, I got to probably work on my traditional grip a little bit, because there's going to be like a handful of guys that are going to want to do that.
Yep.
So I started to retool up when the Frankfurt Fair was going on, like maybe a month before. And I remember showing Freddie, and I was like, Freddie, check this out. And I was like retooling up everything. And he goes, I built it that way. And I was kind of thinking, no, you didn't. We didn't even do that. I mean, we barely touched it. I just kind of brought forward other things. But in essence, conceptually, he did, because the concept of whether it's this or this, it all works the same.
It all works the same.
Factor and all that stuff. Hi, Steve. How are you, man?
Hey, Steve. Nice to see you.
Great to see you on the subject. The etude you present is great for improving your command of the pulse. Thank you. And I don't remember, Steve, if we did those etudes in the Contemporary Percussionist. I know we were doing setups and doing things out of the way I use Ted Reed as a little bit of a kind of a feeder into that. But they are exceptional. But so back to the traditional grip. Yeah, I think that would be a good idea. Again, there's only so much time in the day.
Right.
My brain has only so much real estate to kind of accept certain responsibilities.
I'm just curious, because I'm one of the guys who I would like to take what I've learned with the match grip, and I see how, and you do see how it works, and you think, I get it. I can see where you take a traditional and the motions and you can see the energy of it. And I think, I should go back and really, because that was something I grew up with. I wasn't terrible at it. I should go back and maybe.
Right.
But then I think, God, there's so much time. Do you have a lot of students who are like, let's do both? Or do you find most people focusing on one most of the time?
I have a few guys that are trad guys. I have a guy up in Toronto who's a great jazz drummer. We'll give a shout out to Nick Fraser. Okay. And Nick is a traditional grip guy. But I did, just insist, hey, whatever we do in these match grip exercises, do your left hand as well. And it's changed. He was telling me that it's just like he feels so much more flow. He expressed like a few months back that he was doing like sort of a hard bopping kind of a gig, like tenor sax, and it sounds like it was like a really hard bopping. And he told me that normally after a gig like that, he feels quite fatigued and won't even touch sticks the next day to sort of kind of rest. And he said, yeah, man. He goes, at the end of the night, I felt great. And he goes, and I went and practiced 2 hours the next day. I was like, great. That's what we're looking for. Those are the kind of tangible evidence that I want to put forward. And Nick, again, he's like, I think he's in his 40s, mid 40s or so. I'm not sure exactly. So
I'm going to get caught up on a couple of things here. First of all, Steve was following up that you must have done a few etudes.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Great. Yeah, those etudes are just so fun, man.
Got Gil jumping in here. I appreciate you. Tried to help me with my traditional grip as well. Yeah. Hope you were. Yeah. I was curious how many traditional grip guys we kind of have in here. I was kind of a little bit me trolling everybody a little bit. Just
guys of my era, are usually guys who started with traditional grip. I did. That was what I did
too. That was my vibe. And, I'm an age now. And, then I went in, I was one of those geeky guys who went in drum corps, and they made you do both. And match grip just wasn't my strength. And that's something we've worked on. And yet I wanted to do that. I wanted to be better at that for whatever reason. But now there's a part of me going, wow, I've seen so much improvement with Bruce with my match grip. Man, I should really go back and just do everything with my traditional grip following that advice. Maybe I would just fall in love with that again. It was always so much easier for me.
For me, for the main reason now, especially playing match grip, is that I find it easier to get around the drum set.
Yeah.
I find it easier to get to the bottom of the drum with my match grip in my left hand. And while I'm not an open-handed kind of a guy, there are things, that you kind of, from watching Gad, where Gad plays a right-handed thing, but just opens it up. And so the right hand's on the snare drum and the left hand on the hi-hat. Ways to leave your lover and those kind of things.
Yeah.
That just felt more free, and I just could get a better tone and a better bottom. And I practiced, endlessly on a bunch of jazz stuff, sitting in this match grip position, whereby, I have the stick dropping forward as I would in traditional grip. But with the traditional grip, I always feel like I'm skating on the head. When I touch the top of the head, I feel like I can get to the bottom.
Yeah.
There's a resonant factor and a body that I can pull out. And that's not playing louder. That's just a tonal consideration.
Okay. Who put this in here? Yeah, I saw this too, Tony, but Larry said, I vote for a masterclass on introducing traditional grip. That could actually, I think that'd be pretty interesting.
That's great.
Yeah.
I have a whole bunch of like great setups and exercises. I always tell everybody, and it may sound a little far-fetched, but I can get your traditional grip going faster than any other grip. To me, the components of mechanics are not that difficult to achieve. Again, the positioning and playing part of it, that's another consideration. So that takes a little longer, because like I said, if I'm coming over from the small tom to the floor tom, I just don't feel the bottom.
Yeah.
There are guys who kill on it, and there's several.
They snap it off. They're just so, but you're right. It's such a different animal. That's one of the reasons. And I, Tony's saying the same thing that when I met you, I started getting into more things where I had to hit harder as well. And I felt the same way. And, there's pain involved, and probably because I was doing if I took your traditional teaching now and I developed it, I think I would get that snap for sure and that tone I want without the pain. But at the time, I wasn't really putting that together. I was I got to get the match grip. This will just change everything. And I think there's a lot of benefit to going into a direction that's going to fight with you for a minute and test you. But you know what, Tony? I want to say, Tony makes a comment here. This was another problem with me, Tony. And then as I was trying to develop my lower half, I was leaning as well. It was just in the traditional grip, and it was throwing me off balance. So it was more than just
watch, buddy.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I'm not promoting that because this pad's too low for trad. When I work on things with trad grip for people, I always instantly say, raise the pad.
Right.
Don't worry about an angle to the pad. Raise the pad so that you're coming down to where you need to be.
But so many don't, because they say, you got to have it at a certain belt. You got to get it up there.
But have it, set where the mechanics of the pivoting stick are going to work.
Yeah. But so many don't. I see people leaning constantly, and I'm like, oh my God, you're back.
See, I mean, now that we're talking about it, that stuff starts to open up in my hand and how it works. But again, I just don't give it a great. I'll tell you where I play our traditional grip, and that's for brushes. That's the first.
Yeah, you've mentioned that. The other issue.
I tried forever to play in a match grip, and it just didn't work.
I don't know if Larry's here, but I know Larry does a lot of. He does a lot of different percussion stuff. Like I do a lot of percussion as well, and that was the other issue. It's just really easier a lot of times to get that stuff going with match grip as you're floating around different percussion instruments and having to deal with touch. At least for me, and so that I'm like, this just makes more sense to me.
Yeah. Hey, I just wanted to go back to Tony. He said, "When's your book coming? When do you expect my book?" Let's just say, I'll say somewhere in the summer. That should be probably somewhere in the summer. What that means, that gives me a little in and out, like maybe June to September. Of course, I don't have an inked deal yet, but I expect that there should be some news about how it's going to come out. Even if it comes out just with me, I'm not really concerned about that.
Oh, we're all excited for our signed Bruce Becker copy. So
yeah, exactly.
That's on our shelf.
It'll be good. It was a really fun project, and I worked with one of my former students, Tim Carman, who's got a few books out. He's got one book out with Alfred. I think it's more of a beginner's book.
Doing great.
He has a book called Groove Systems with Hudson, as well as on his own for the hard copy. And his third book is going to be coming out, and that's just I don't want to spoil the title, so I won't say anything. I don't know if it's been, like if there's been a press release, but excellently done. And Tim, what a great dude, man. Helped me out and formulate it. And, I had a little help from some others, just in terms of like looking over text, and my student Keith, who had edited my first book, looked it over, and he gave some great, insights, etc. So all good. All right, so here we are, 10:22 in LA, and I know it's really 9:22 in my brain. But again, thanks, Jeff, for always co-hosting. Great job. And everybody, thank you for allowing me to, blither away here. If anybody out there is interested, go get that Contemporary Percussionist, man. Just call Pro Drum Shop. And then on the teaching side, if anybody's ever interested in re-upping their game and chops and really breaking things down to a level of minutia that will be so beneficial. I can tell you 60 or 70 guys right now on this phone that I can text, from Peter Barnett to Peter Warren to Ray Leonardo to on, and former guys like Larry Graves and Steve Mancuso. They all, you know, we worked hard and got a lot of results. You know, it's been, let's say, a constant effort on my part to up my game, what I do in terms of presentation, and bring a fresh spin to things. I'm not one who comes to sleep at the lesson. I'm pretty engaged. I would say absolutely engaged. I had somebody say that to me the other day. They said, man, I've never seen you show up like less than, 100%. I go, well, may not show once in a while because, if I'm like not feeling well or my dog bit my foot or my kids were screaming at me, I just try not to bring it into the lesson.
We all have those, days. I remember I did almost 2+ years with you straight. And you never walked in with a bad attitude or bad engagement. You're right. And
Yeah.
I know you had to have had bad days because I was coming in grumpy. So,
there's a layout of work, and it's always, to me, it's very matter of fact. There's like a way of laying it out, and the details of that are just fun for me. It's engaging, and it comes out even better than it ever did before because I've been doing it for so long, and I see it so clear as to how you can build these things up.
Yes.
And have a path. It's not sort of scattered, smothered, and covered items.
Well,
there's very clear steps to manifest to bring about the best results.
You know where you're going with it. So, all right. Well, I want to thank everybody. I see a bunch of that here too. Gil and
thank you, Gil.
Dropping it on. You guys were great today. I appreciate that. And
thank you, Tony.
Steve, everybody. I appreciate Larry, of course, everybody. If I forgot anybody, I apologize. But it was good. I love this. I'm excited for my book. So I appreciate that. Well,
all right, brother.
All right. So you good? You ready to head out, or what do you want to think? What do you think?
Heading out, man.
All right, everybody. Well, guys, we'll let you know next round. Keep your eyes open, and we won't do it on a daylight savings time if we can get away with it.
That's right. No more.
All right.
Next time we will schedule better. But for everybody in the East Coast, it's not as big of a deal.
Nah, they're fine. But people woke up all kind of like, whoa, church, we missed it.
Right.
All right. We'll see you on the other side, Bruce. Talk to you guys later.
Yeah. See you guys.
Peace.